Hello, hello.
Stuart.
I forgot to put the camera on.
What's happening, Stuart? It's been a hot moment, dude.
Yep.
I'm stoked to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too.
Okay, good. We're side by side on the screen, which is nice. We got the thank you, Isaiah approach. We got the crew in the house. I got it going a little earlier. So
Okay.
file in. I like your map.
Yeah, adding some studio upgrades over here.
Yeah, you got a bookshelf, like the whole thing. You're getting ready to go big top, man.
Yeah. Now I just need everyone watching the stream to jump over to my channel and subscribe.
Spam them with the link to your channel. Do you let me hold on.
I don't know if I can drop that in the Zoom thing here and you can take it over there.
Okay, drop it in the Zoom and I'll spam it. I know that Patrick M was just finishing up. Who was Silka Milka Monica was just watching your videos just now. So I've been getting
awesome.
Yeah, dude, people have been feedbacking on your scene, dude. We dig what you're doing. So I know they're watching. How's your subscriber count going up or?
Well, I've been kind of not putting out too many videos the last few weeks. I've been so busy with getting back to teaching, but I went on Jason Burmes's show a couple days ago.
Okay.
The guy responsible for a couple of big time documentaries, Fabled Enemies, Loose Change, this sort of stuff, and was able to get about a boost of just over 100, I think, from going on that show, which was good. But still, just getting out into the algorithm is the problem right now.
It's a tough gig, man. It's all about it's a tough gig. These medias nowadays, man, with the algo, especially doing what you're doing.
Yeah, when you don't align yourself with either the Democrats or the Republicans, the algorithm doesn't know what to do with you.
Yeah. Free thinkers are denied access, right?
Yeah, exactly. Unless
you're not pushing the pro-war narrative, dude.
You're not facilitating the ideological prisons of left and right. Therefore, you're not allowed in this conversation.
No, you're out, man. You have to be pro bomb. Doesn't matter who you bomb, man. We just got to be selling bombs.
Yep, exactly. I did put out a video today though. It was about I think almost 20 minutes long, so it was rather a long one for me. I tried to keep them under 10, but that was looking specifically at Ukraine and Russia and the fact that the Russian military looks like it's collapsing and is in free fall. And then, so what's Putin going to do next? Is he going to press the big red button? Is he not? He's getting a lot of pressure from inside Russia, from outside Russia, from all angles at this point.
Yeah, it's amazing. We're still here.
Yeah, that's really actually how this whole show started, really.
Yeah,
we were just texting back and forth, and then I think you invited me to a stream, and then it just became a thing.
Well, it's here we are, interesting times, trying to just decipher the coding. Like again, I think if we go back to where we were, we would be surprised that we're still here. That there hadn't been some sort of route or but we could, I think we both knew that it was all just a shakedown anyhow to sell bomb making gear.
Yeah, that was absolutely guaranteed, and that's absolutely what happened. And the very last report that I touch on in that latest video that I just put out is Zelensky, Ukrainian president. He's going to be the keynote speaker at an arms industry conference coming up
How
in a
is
couple of
that,
weeks.
dude? Their number one sales rep is
Mhm.
going to speak. I noticed you're wearing a if you're going to wear a Zelensky t-shirt, it needs to be tighter.
I didn't even realize that, but yeah, I guess I am. I got the whole look going.
Yeah. It's tease for leadership, man. Yeah, it's amazing, actually. I mean, so many wheels are moving, yet nothing really seems to be progressing. I know that, I would imagine that as a watcher of the deeper level of it all is the globalist machine is getting tighter and tighter around our necks, and we're just not quite aware of how tight it is yet, because it seems pretty abstract. I think that, when was it? Right about when we had our last live stream, what was that, about 3.5 months ago? It was right about when the yellow and blue just faded right out of the headlines once there wasn't anything really going on. And here we are. I tend to think that I don't know if I necessarily buy into the Russian military free fall. I think it could be a rope-a-dope. I just can't believe that that they're not. This is where I always go with it on you on that thing. Like, they can't be this bad at the game, either side. Like, they're and it seems to me, from where I'm looking at and just the amount of money we're sending over on a regular basis. I mean, what are we up to? Like 60 billion, trillion, quadrillion dollars, like, sent over on, like, what are we doing, like $1 billion a week now, something like that?
Yeah, I think it's up to around 60 billion, I think, right now.
60 billion dollars we've sent over there, and what they're estimating, that 70% of the weapons are going somewhere else. There's no tracking of it. No one seems that concerned.
No, and the thing that Zelensky needs to realize is that he's being used by these people, especially the arms industry. Nothing good is going to come from getting in bed with the arms industry, because what is the arms industry? It's a collection of institutions that has no interest in bringing you peace. They have an interest in the continuation of violence, the continuation of conflict, so they can continue to sell their produce, which is, of course, a weapon system. So yeah, doing that is not good. But yeah, in terms of the other stuff that's going on, during the Cold War, there were also these massive overestimates of Soviet capabilities back in the day. And it was doing exactly the same thing, inflating the domestic military industrial complex on the basis of all of these claims. Some of the big ones you may remember, the major one was the missile gap. The idea that the Soviets had far more missiles than the United States, and therefore we need to put all of our efforts into this, build tens of thousands of missiles and go full speed ahead with it. And then it turned out that, well, that was never the case. The Soviets were never that far ahead. And something that I think explains the disaster that this turned into and the stalemate that it became is something that I spoke about with Jason Burmas earlier in the week. This was a conflict of two somewhat symmetrical forces. So they looked exactly the same on a technological level, very similar capabilities. So when those two things crash together, it kind of just ends like this. It ends with a lot of dead people, a lot of destroyed equipment, and that's the case on both sides. And then eventually one side makes a mistake and you'll get a big shift like we just got here. But for the most part, it becomes a disaster. So for all these claims of, well, if we just had more technologically exquisite weapons, if we just had space-based weapons or artificial intelligence, autonomous weapons, right? If we take it into the super hyper-technical direction of the next 10, 15 years, well, maybe that's not going to do anything to make wars any less violent after all. Perhaps it's not going to do anything to make them shorter. Perhaps we're just going to end up with these complete disasters. And and again, the specific thing that I've heard for why the Russians collapsed in this way is not only that the symmetrical nature of the conflict, but the fact that the Ukrainians have actually done some clever strategic games with the Russians in terms of openly broadcasting, hey, we're going to be coming from the west at this particular time at this particular place, right? So they put that openly over the airwaves, and then they've been sweeping in from completely an entirely different direction. So they've been doing some things that have just caught the Russian commanders on the ground off guard that they haven't been prepared for. Because again, and we mentioned this before, yeah, no problem. One of the big things that happened with the Russian military recently is, where did they go? They went into Syria. Well, going into Syria and doing battle with ragtag forces in the desert, which have no technological capabilities whatsoever. They can't do any strategic games like this whatsoever. Yeah, you're gonna annihilate them, right? Like the US successfully annihilated Iraq and Afghanistan, temporarily at least. But when you come face to face with a similar force, yeah, this is what happens. So Putin, I don't think, is in a good position right now. Yeah, I'll pause there.
Well, I think that, it's the interesting, Great Flood said is I mean, there's a conclusion that can be drawn, I think, at this stage, like what I've been watching these wars for my whole adult life, and nobody seems to be any good at it. Like at the end of the day, mm-hmm. It doesn't matter how radical your army is, how bitchin' your fighter jets are, how super tech your tanks are, how radical your helmets are, your digital uniforms, whatever it is. At the end of the day, none of these people can actually like pull it off. And it seems to me at this stage it is just a rebelizing event. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, the war is really the cover story for rebelizing, one of the largest food baskets on the planet, and destroying the infrastructure. You look at Iraq, you look at what just happened in Afghanistan, you look at all the incursions by all these other countries all over the place. None of them have been successful. I mean, you even look back at the Chicago School of Economics and their incursions down in Latin and South America and Central America. Like, none of them worked. My
PhD supervisor has written a lot on that.
So we're at this point where, like, I think it can be pretty much established that a standing army is pretty much useless on a military level, right? If, like, in the sense of, like, there's almost an argument that could be made that armies are obsolete. That really at the end of the day is, I think we both got it right on this level. Like, on a thing is, the Russians can ride this one out because of my theory that they have a 1920s sort of mentality and economy, right? And I think, like your statement was that the Ukrainians are going to be able to route this one out because they're pretty much technologically advanced independents, right? They have the ability to dial themselves in with this modern sort of unorganized system, and it's really seems to be it's a stalemate of two groups of people that really aren't dependent upon the big army concept. You know what I mean? Like, the big army concept came in on the first wave and sort of petered out, ironically, and then the Ukrainians didn't have anything to push back with, and then it's just sort of just quagmired into trench warfare, essentially. Like, I think we're going to just see that line moving around for the next, George Orwell future. because when they make a big deal about it, right? Like, and I did see the strategy of they were bombing that bridge. They were down in the southern city of Kherson or whatever it was, trying to like make a play down in the Dnieper River and all that. And then they like immediately swung in from the north. But when you look at it on a map, like, okay, big, it wasn't like some big, George Patton or Rommel type of move where they're like just sweeping down like a big hand, like cleaning the chessboard. It's like, yeah, they went and grabbed their evacuated positions and grabbed a bunch of land back and pushed up to the Russian border, which again is where I see it's the danger of this whole thing. Do the Ukrainian paramilitary military types view the Russian border as a legitimate line in the sand at this point? Like, I don't know if I would.
That's what I was just going to say. Imagine if that was you and I, and that was our country. I could easily see us wanting to think, you know what, it's time to take the fight back to them.
Yeah, and that's where it seems to be an interesting game. Like, and this is where, again, as you're more of analysis of the real information, and I'm the layman analysis. What I don't understand is that nobody's really taken the gloves off yet, right? I'll still argue that like. That I don't see, like, when I look at certain aspects of it, the fact that like how with advanced countries, like we're not doing like, primitive countries, like both of them have the ability to jam radio signals, right? And so how any drone is able to get off the ground baffles me to this point where like if you're any sort of military, that would be, I think in modern warfare, that would be the first thing you would do, would just be like, I still don't get why the EMP hasn't been deployed. If you're the Russians or the Ukrainians for that fact, why they haven't done localized EMP blasts and just taken out, and because it's all electronic warfare. If you see the Ukrainians are strictly getting by with drones, it looks to me is, and so you look at that, and then I still like, I'll still like, my gunlers always don't get too lizard on Stuart about the nukes. I still, if there were nukes, I would have used them by now. Like why they're not bombing, why Putin's not bombing the hell out of Kiev, I don't know. Like, I would be sending cruise missiles into downtown Kiev all day long, or Kyiv.
Yeah, I think we could offer two explanations for this. The first one is a really important term in the study of international relations: reciprocity. What you do to me, I'm going to do to you. Generally speaking, this can help to explain why you don't get the sort of escalations that you're alluding to, the mass cyber attacks, the massive air raid campaigns. Because the minute you do that, I think you perhaps do open the door to something coming back over your border and hitting something over your border, which all of a sudden changes the domestic situation for Putin as well. And that's the second point I think explains this. If you look at any broadcasts of Russian generals on TV or Russian politicians on TV that are close to Putin, this is not a war. This is a special military operation. So they're framing it in this way, that this is limited. This is for a small amount of time. It's a small amount of troops, a small amount of firepower. Nothing terrible is going on. We're to have for these very clear objectives. We're achieving them. Everything's going to plan. If you start to escalate things, when all of a sudden, let's say you do start leveling Kiev, and then the Ukrainians start firing back into mainland Russia, you've got to explain that to your citizens. Why is this town just being wiped off the face of the earth? And there are now some other interesting moves within Russia where it appears that this domestic charade, let's say, of the special military operation is falling apart. And you've probably seen these clips of the Russian political talk shows where they have the hosts, and at the start of the war they were like, Putin's not doing enough, we need to nuke Kiev, send a nuke into Kiev, send a nuke into London, show them who's boss. Those same people are now on TV saying that we think we've been lied to and something is clearly going very wrong here. So I think for Putin, this is the most dangerous period yet for his rule on a personal level. I would expect to see him still at the very far end of the tables for the foreseeable future. He will not probably want to be around too many other figures right now, because he's got a massive target on his back, I think.
Well, that's where, like, I find, like, when I try to wrap my head, because I don't view that. I just view that as like the distraction in the center of the room, right? The swirly thing, so you don't look over here and see what's going on, right? Like, it seems to me that this is all, like, when I look at that, where I see that the most is the fact that they have gotten what was once a pretty prominent and, I don't know, well-known worldwide thing, which was the anti-war movement of the United States, which would have been your traditional left, which would be a person like me, like, who's staunchly anti-war. You have turned the formerly anti-war movement of the United States off. Somehow, I don't quite understand how people have bought into this. It is very much attached to the whole, when you get into the weird thing with, like, the Orange Man and the movement of the beginning of the Russian thing, right? And then you go back even before with, the Wesley Clark and the Seven Nations, and we're going to do this, and they bump up into Syria, and then the Russians kind of drop down in and are like, nah, we're keeping our warm water port down there, and you guys can kick rocks, and we kind of, like, that's when all that sort of kicked off with the smooth talker, the Obama. And so you look back as, like, that they were pretty like, the anti-Russian thing kind of began at the tail end of Obama because of Syria.
Because what was that? That was a legitimate international force that could stand up to the will of the Western transnational military industrial complex. That's what that was doing. It was standing in the way of what it wanted to do, which is why you could have analyzed Russia back then as actually somewhat of a positive force in the world. If it could have stopped the military industrial complex in its tracks, that would have been useful for us that are concerned with peace in the Western world. Because when you think about it, what influence do we have as citizens on what this military industrial complex does? I would argue practically none. So we have this thing called a vote. Has that ever changed this military industrial complex in the last nearly 100 years? Not really. So there was then something we could look to outside of our respective countries. For a while, Russia as this alternative force that could maybe do something to curtail that. But now, unfortunately, Putin has done his best impression of George W. Bush, and here we are.
Well, it's to me that when I try to sort of stand back from it a little bit, like it's too easy, the Ukraine, right? Like, when we were doing it, like, we both are quite aware that this has been a historic battlefield between, Asia and Europe and these opposing forces for thousands of years. And it's just moved around, and there's no real ownership that can be truly claimed at this point, man. It's a moving free for all, right? You have factions all over that'll roll whichever way they need to roll. And so with that said, right, it's this perfect place. And I think when we first started coming onto this, like right before it began, as we saw what was going on, is this is the perfect place to get this going, because it's, it's preloaded. It's like a preloaded phone card. It's got all the stuff in there. So why go there, right? And there seems to be something more diabolical going on if I look at it from my own country's perspective, as a pretty solid anti-war activist, who's been opposed to all these incursions, who's been anti all this war, who's been that's been the fraudulent narrative of the patriot from day one, which is this interventionist. You can't be a patriot and go believe that patriotism involves crushing other people's patriotism. Dude, like that does not. A true patriot is the George Washington non-interventionalist. Like, no, So I look at this and I go, it seems to me when this building of this thing it's like you've taken this group of Americans, you've got them you've got everybody thinking that it had something to do with the Orange Man. What if it all along was just to de-arm the anti-war movement, which was very strong in the United States? And it appears to be an Orange Man thing, but the Orange Man is the decoy to get the people that are anti-war to be in support of this thing, because it's the Russian narrative that got its tracks laid long before going on. And it's this thing that they've been trying to lead us to my entire life. My entire life's been trying to take out what was formerly the Soviet Union. And then we had that sort of the Hasselhoff moment when the wall came down, and good times for all. And now
I was born in 1991.
Yeah, so
I came out of the womb ready to experience a world free of conflict, and look where we are now.
I had a piece of the wall once upon a time. Dude.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like that was a fun. I was in it's at 91, right? So I would have been like 2021. I remember watching it on TV with my friend Sasha Mislansky on, like, when that was going on, dude. And so, it's this weird thing where like I try to, like, something much deeper is going on. I don't know. It could be nothing, could be something, could be everything. And,
I got a similar thought along these lines.
Okay.
And I've been trying to figure this out and how to talk about it. And I don't think I've 100% got there yet. Maybe you can help. What do you think about whenever you hear on the news that there's someone calling for peace, or someone calling for talks between the two sides, or reach a deal, reach an agreement, reach perhaps a compromise? In other words, aim for peace. What do you think of those people being immediately branded as appeasers of Putin, appeasers of Russia? Because it's almost like they're trying to recast the people that are calling for peace as sort of the Vichy French, right? They're just waiting in the wings, ready, like we just want to join the Russians and we want to see the Russians win, and we want to be on their side in this modern fascist state that perhaps they see appearing here. But I don't think calling for peace should be immediately equated with appeasement. And I think that's really dangerous.
Well, I'm right there. Like, I think maybe that's right where I'm going with it. So I can only like one of the things that I like to do is I check out my immediate, like, unfiltered response, and then back it off and ask myself, why did I think that? So the other day when the Ukrainians made an advance, right? And I was like, this is no good. Like, my initial reaction was like, this is no good. Like, let's go Ruskies, right? And I was like, why am I rooting for these dudes all of a sudden? And I go, wait a minute, like, who are these people that are this other thing? Because again, if you get down to the people on the ground, this is a disaster. right? I'm not rooting for any of these people. I'm rooting for the people stuck in their basements, right? But on the bigger level, like when you see who Zelensky is, he is the epitome of the woke demagogue. He's in his slimy t-shirt, his slimy Hollywood ass kissing, put me on the Grammys and the award. He reeks like, excuse my language, he's a star fucker. Like he wants to be a red carpet star fucker all day long, dude. So I see this thing going on, and he just reeks of the same wokeness that's going on here in the United States, right? And I go, I want him to get smashed because I just don't. What that dude represents is so slimy, right? And then I gotta go, well, wait a minute, like. I'm being tricked into being like pro rebelizing because now I've fallen back from spiritual truth and I've now picked a team. I don't like this dude. I like these, like on the thing is like, I've got to root for these other dudes because this dude's a scumbag. He's doing the bit, like the mere fact he's showing up and doing the thing for the military thing and he's begging for weapons and they'll give us more weapons, give us more weapons. But we also know he's a puppet, right? Like we can be like now at this thing when it all got released that Boris went over there and like shut down any sort of detente early on when he was ready to deal and wheel and deal and be like, okay, they said no, we're going to keep coming. He's got his backup. Zelensky's, he's taking his scumbaggery out of it. That dude's in a rock and a hard place. He's obviously a regime puppet that got put in by the West, but he's also got a bunch of the lunatics of Ukraine who are like, hey, dude, you don't get out of here alive unless you do our bidding. So I think he's kind of stuck in this thing too. Like, hey man, if I can get some good star fucking in, like I'm gonna go for it, dude. What do I mean? I get the Gap t-shirt and the green chair and but he's slimy, dude. I don't get how people can't see past how slimy that dude is, dude.
Yeah, it kind of comes back to just a more critical, realistic view of all political leaders and political elites, that these are not really anyone that you want to be around for any significant period of time.
Well, it's the World Economic Forum guys, right, dude? These people all kind of come from the same, club, and again is what is the real thing, because there's a certain level of it too, right? If you look at, right, we're far enough down. What are we, 6-7 months down into this thing? Like when this all started, the big worry was going to be like, we're all going to starve, dude. It's the second biggest, it's the food basket and this and that and the fertilizers and this and that. And like, they've been stoking that BS fire. I bought into it. Like I was like, oh, dude, I better go get some stock up on my grains in my pantry and stuff. And here we are. Like,
yeah, I think that's still that's an issue for Africa and some places in Asia, but yeah, not really over here. But that wasn't really, I don't think.
But the Chinese ain't gonna let the Africans starve.
Like
that works for the Belt and Roaders, man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but what I'm getting at is when I sort of bubble under the surface to like the puppetry of it all, there seems to be wheels that turn no matter what. And I don't mean like the military industrial complex wheels or the Rothschild wheels or the betting on both side wheels. I mean these like baseline realities of existence on this planet. Like you would have thought it, the way they had shut down the Black Sea ports and Odessa and mined all that stuff, that like there would be some real deeper like ramifications 6 weeks out. I mean, the spring harvest and all that stuff, like we really like, maybe it's still, the ripple's still coming our way with the fertilizer shortages and the this and the that's and the this and the that's. But to me at this point, it is almost falling under this sort of Y2K thing that like, you know, like that I keep going back to is like, I grew up like you're born in 91, right? The wall had fallen. Like, you know, I got the trauma of the mutually assured destruction, right? Like my whole like formative years was the get under the desk and like, we're all going to die and the day of and the day after in Threads, the scariest movie ever made. Have you watched Threads yet?
No.
Dude, you're an English dude. The scariest movie ever made, Threads. And
I've never seen Doctor Strangelove either.
Oh, dude, Doctor Strangelove's all time, dude. Stanley Kubrick at his finest.
That's one of the ones that's
but Threads is a very, only the English can do a movie the way that Threads is done. It's very cheap, but very raw. And it's very like got these, it's about kind of the day of the nuclear war, right? And it just follows this kind of girl into the future, and just the thing, it's so dark and British B-level movie that it's these to me, I will say it's the scariest movie ever made, dude, because it's probably, if you buy into the nuclear war narrative, like the most realistic portrayal you have. So anyway, we grew up with this, and I see again it's, you know, here we are, like they've sort of cut and run, and they're like, all right, like, dude, it's, no one cares anymore. We got what we wanted. We got the anti-war left in America to rally behind war. So they've lost their moral high ground. Like America will never have a true anti-war movement again, which I think is they've done. I think they've gutted the once pretty status quo part of the American experience was anti-war, and it's gone, dude. Just like the environmental movement's been killed in America too. Like, so you have nobody trying to save the trees and nobody trying to stop wars. And, you know, the greatest country, greatest superpower in the world, dude, which sucks.
Yeah, it's a bit of a disaster on all of those levels, especially, like I said, when peace is now being reframed every time I watch a news report as appeasement. That is not what peace is. That's not the kind of peace that I was ever calling for. I can tell you that for sure. And like we've also both said before, we're not pacifists. We're against militarism on the level of using offensive force to get something that you want. But neither of us are just going to sit back and let ourselves be steamrolled either, which I don't think that they should have done. And they should have fought back, and they should have done what they could have done. But yeah, peace for me means going back to what the borders were prior to this, right? Go back to what it was. Figure out a way of negotiating into that, whatever it's got to be. But yeah, I guess we could do a dramatic shift in topic here if you want.
Oh, for sure. I was just about to, because I don't think many, like, I'll throw mine up and I'll see if it's where you're kind of going. I've been watching the bubbling up in the green zone, and what's going on in Iraq seems to be like something of a concern. I don't know if that's where were you going?
No, I was going to shift back to the homeland.
Okay, let's switch back, because I think it's all tied together.
The Queen and now the King.
Oh yes, the falling of the Commonwealth. Yeah,
very big news, of course, that hit the, I don't even remember when it was at this point. It's the never-ending news story. It could have.
Are you a royalist?
No, you know, of course that's going to be a no.
Down with the monarchy.
No, I was actually I teach in the United States, for those of you that don't know. So of course this week I had students asking me, what do you think about the Queen? So then I had to go through this whole process of, well, we're teaching American government. Let's say we're back in the 1700s. I would have been on one of those ships escaping the royalty to come over here to the free United States for sure. So yeah, for me, it's on that really political, moral, ethical level of what I'm against when it comes to royalty. It's just
Sure, dude.
baffling.
They aren't positive. I mean, on this, just as an outsider's perspective, they're not positive do-gooders in the UK. Like they're just leeches. They're literally vampires. But on the time check, I think if again, I will come from an outsider's perspective about it. I see that this is now a global turning point where obviously something's afoot. Did you see the weird anomalies all around the Queen's death though? Because I get kind of into the coded nature of all this, not too heavily though, but literally I believe it was 911 days from the beginning of the coup till the Queen died. The Queen's big procession was on 9/11. There's all sorts of weird number stuff with the Queen's untimely demise. And then you look at the thing as like, yeah, you got Chucky there. And Chucky is not a sympathetic figure.
No.
Chucky does not have any of the, he's got, you know what's interesting with him when you watch him, right? Like there's a certain, why the Queen was the Queen was she had a certain air of royalty to her. Like regardless of whether you're into the monarchy or not, it's like she was a queen, dude. Like,
yeah, and she was the sweet little old lady.
But she had a queenness to her.
Yeah, plus that, which is very easy to love.
Well, and I don't even know if it's that, but I guess casting, right? I was watching something, I think it was on Quantum of Consciousness or Pockets of the Future. They were talking about, they were like just imagine being a producer casting a movie about the royals and casting the king. And this was the dude you had to cast. Is he doesn't make a very good character in the story, which I think is troubling, because what I think on a global level, which falls right into the globalist thing, is you're gonna, you tell me, it seems like you're gonna see like the breakup of the Commonwealth, so to speak, on a at least superficial level. Whether it really means anything underneath it all is, and like you looks like, you know, you've already seen signs of that. What Jamaica said they were on the way out. You had Australia saying they're on the way out. You have, you know, some of these African nations going, so what do you think about that? Is Chucky doesn't seem to be a sympathetic character to keep the Commonwealth alive.
Yeah, definitely not. This is no longer the sweet little old lady. We now already have multiple clips providing video evidence that this is now the grumpy, angry old man, which definitely is not as endearing to general support, let alone our country is thousands of miles away and we want you to be our head of state level support. On the Channel 4 News YouTube channel, it's a British news outlet. It's a pretty good one. They actually now have a report up there from Jamaica. And let's say the Jamaicans are not ecstatic about Charles, and they want to leave, I think, as soon as possible. They want a Jamaican to be their head of state, not an old, angry, grumpy white guy, probably 4,000 miles away in the United Kingdom. And with Australia, you also mentioned, Australia's current prime minister is a Republican. He's not a royalist. So this is what helped him get elected, the fact that he was saying Australia should have an Australian head of state. Now, since the Queen has died, he came out and said, well, this isn't the time to talk politics, and we're not going to have a referendum for at least a year, but delaying the inevitable, I think.
Well, so again is and help me out here is and for most people, I kind of get the framework of it, the Commonwealth a little bit, but I think it's a bit over the Americans' head. So like you've already referred to like the fact that Australia and Jamaica would want their own head of state. So essentially in the Commonwealth, these aren't truly independent nations, or they are, or I've always, I know that, for example, like Canada, like, the queen has to okay it, and she can come and shut down parliament, and that
that can be done in any of these countries with the governor general. That's the figure that the queen can use to dissolve the respective parliaments. Now, something I was watching, apparently this happened back in Australia, and I don't know enough about it to talk about it, but it's something that I want to look into further. And those of you that are watching this and finding this interesting should also do. Yeah, apparently she used the governor general to dissolve the Australian government, and there were some shady things going on behind the scenes there. And the palace actively worked to cover up why they actually did that and what they were trying to achieve. But again, I'm not an expert in Australian politics. I couldn't really tell you any motives for that, but I think it's something worth looking into.
Well, that's what I think's interesting. So when, you hear these rumblings, I like, you hear people talking about it, which, if you kind of are into this geopolitics stuff, you're aware of, but I don't think your average person's even like contemplated like that the Commonwealths are actually like not like sovereign nations as you would think. And so when you get that, so let's say that now the king has the ability to dissolve all these parliaments. How would, for example, any of these governments remove their ties from the Commonwealth if essentially the king can come in and be like, nah, I'm dissolving this government that would say they're going to do this, and you guys can't do it because you're part of the Commonwealth? Like,
yeah, I don't know. I don't have an answer for that, except that it would be a crisis. That's what they would call a constitutional crisis in the Commonwealth systems. But there's if I can share the screen here.
Yeah, because
there is a
because what I think's interesting is where people don't really get is the amount of like actual land holdings that the crown, right? The crown has in all of these secret papers show extent of senior royals veto bill.
So this is a very real power that I do know about that the royals have, which is not extensively well known. And it's laid out right about here. And also probably worth starting with the first paragraph, actually. The extent of the Queen and Prince Charles's, right, so this is now the king, secretive power of veto over new laws has been exposed after Downing Street lost its battles to keep the information secret. Whitehall papers prepared by cabinet officers' lawyers show that overall at least 39 bills have been subject to the most senior royals' little-known power to consent to or block new laws. They also reveal the power has been used to torpedo proposed legislation relating to decisions about the country going to war. So what this is, it's a secret, right? Not my words, the actual words, a secret power that the royal family has to veto laws which they don't agree with. And the primary thing, I don't know if it's mentioned in here, but it was revealed that it was really anything that was targeting their private interests that they could veto. So you're living in a system where supposedly you have a parliament and the parliament makes laws of by and for the people. Well, not always, right? In 39 cases, that is not what has happened. Of by and for the people, not so much. Of by and for the royals, or the royals have said, no, we don't want you to do this. We're going to do this instead.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I think that's kind of what I'm driving at is you have this moment, right? And this is more where I wanted to get to you about is your new PM, Liz Truss, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whoa, dude, you guys got the button pusher. If you ever found a button pusher to push the button, man.
Mm-hmm.
Man, she is Hillary Redux, dude. Holy smoke, warmonger and all. So
Yeah,
how do
well,
you feel
what did
about
she
her?
say? You sent me. I'm gonna see if I can find that because you sent me it. What did she
Oh
say?
yeah, so I was like, dude, what's because that's the thing is that it's about
Oh
the
yeah, yeah. She
the
was
nuke.
asked about nuclear weapons, and the quote was, "I'm ready to do it. I'm
Yeah,
ready to launch the nukes."
she'll do it.
Well, that's great. That's fantastic, isn't it?
Well, so again, is for those in the West who don't, or in America, we don't really we know who these people are when they sort of surface
Oh,
and
nobody knew who she was until 6 months ago when she became the
okay.
foreign secretary. So yeah, I'd never heard of her before until she became foreign secretary 6 months ago, and now all of a sudden she's prime minister.
And so now that she is, who is she? Like, what's her? She seems to be
She's
another globalist.
ultra neoliberal. Cut all the regulations, cut all the taxes for corporations, and that will solve all the problems.
Got you. Bomb,
And
bomb, bomb.
I was listening to a podcast earlier from Webster Tarpley, another name you may have heard
Yep.
of before. And he was making the case that Boris Johnson, all these scandals about him suddenly started coming out after he wanted to implement a windfall tax on the massive profits of the energy companies. And then all of a sudden, oh, look, we got more scandals coming out the woodwork. And then all of a sudden he's out of office. And Liz Truss, who says, no, we don't want to do that windfall tax. We're conservatives. No more taxes. Get rid of that. Support the transnational energy companies. And now she's prime minister.
Well, that's what's I think that's what's so interesting. England is an interesting little pot because it is an island, right? And I think the energy situation is going to arrive there first, and it seems like it already is, right? The fleecing of the citizenry they're gonna have a long winter.
Mm-hmm.
It seems
Yeah,
to
so
be.
they have put I don't think I sent you it, but I wrote a big article on this actually. Let me I'll throw that in the chat as well. That'll give the viewers something else to read. But yeah, so she did do a price cap.
Yeah, I saw that.
What she doesn't tell you is that the price is capped, but it's capped at twice the amount that people were paying this time last year.
I'm sure. Well, that's like the gas situation here, right?
Yeah.
So it's like on the cheap gas station down the street, it came down to $5. There's the in the chat. There's Stuart's article right there, and bam, it came down to $5.29. So today was the first day and and it stayed there for like 3 weeks and it just went back up today, right? Like, so we got our little reprieve, but our energy prices are essentially up by what 30%. Where they
You want to
were.
know something interesting about that?
What's that?
The city that I live in Oklahoma, has the lowest prices in the whole country.
Good for you, man. Start a family, dude.
Somehow scored on that level.
Well, it's an interesting thing, like it just goes back to this whole thing of like, oh, well, we're going to price cap it, but it's double what you paid. Oh, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for stopping the bleeding. We're only going to die of blood loss, but we only lost to court, due to your malpractice.
Yeah. And that's supposed to be for 2 years, but for businesses, they're only getting it for 6 months. And there are already some businesses that have just closed down already because they got quotes for electricity that was like $500,000 for a year. How is a small business supposed to pay that?
Wow. I got you. It's really another attack on the small business communities of the UK. That's more where I, again, as I see all these things, you've got a button pusher now, like, you go back to the Ukraine thing again, it's like we're footing the bill for it, But Boris is the one who's over there going, no, you're not going to do the appeasements, dude. No appeasement deals for you. But we're financing it. And that's where, like, you look at these things again, as you put this interesting person over in the UK, which falls under another check mark identity politics type of person. Okay, she's a woman, dude. So now she can, like, and she sounds scarier than most dudes, man. Like, just some angry old battle axe is ready to prove she's got it. She's not going to back down, and here we are, right? Like, more of this weird vacuum we're getting sucked into day by day, which it's very hard to, it all seems to be quite obvious, yet it's very clouded at the same time. Like, I don't quite know what it is, but I feel what it is.
Because if you also look at the former leader of the Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn,
yeah,
and he was completely anti-nuclear. He was the first ever leader of a British political party to go to an anti-war, anti-nuclear rally in central London, and he actually spoke at it. And then look what happens to him. Well, completely destroyed.
Well, that again, that there's something like, whoa, kitty cat, what are you doing? There's something up with that whole thing too. Like, I know it's that weird thing. I'm going to go a little bit lizard on you, but as a dude who doesn't believe there's any of this nuclear stuff going, I think another tell we got, besides the fact that they haven't fired one off in Eastern Europe, is the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, right? Like, it's interesting. Like if you listen to it, they're literally telling you that they're turning off the thing because they don't have enough electricity to keep it on. Like, as an electrical, like that, like, that's like, you can't make that up. Like, they're telling, like, we're turning it off because we don't have enough electricity.
Don't read too far into my article then, because I advocate, I think nuclear power is the answer to our energy problems. I think if we had a nuclear reactor on every street corner, we could never think about energy again.
Well, I think the technology's come a long way in that thing. And this would be where I would take it on that thing, is the reason that they can begin to talk like that is because it was always like that. It's not that toxic. It's been a giant con job from the get-go. And now it's time we're like, okay, we're going to need to maneuver this around. So yeah, you can have these localized reactors that will fire for infinite time, because it's always been there. They've been really, like, hustling us the whole time, but the gig is up. Like, I don't prescribe to the doomsdayers, right? Like, I've almost come full circle on a lot of these things, or at least the other side of the full circle.
I feel like last time we spoke, you were total doomsday. you were ready to go and have your own bunker and just go and live out your rest of your days in that alone.
Well, I'm still on that aspect of it, but I guess what I mean about it is the like, even then, is like, the doomsday I see isn't the doomsday that's being pushed as the narrative. Like, when I look at the globalists and the elites and all this type of stuff, I think you have a reactionary set of people, especially in the truther community, that are convinced that, like, these people that these people's spacesuits aren't vulnerable, right? Like, the human body, I don't care how rich you are, is still vulnerable to the same elemental realities that all of us are. Ultraviolet radiation, toxic this, toxic that, the food, this and that. And I think we've reached a point where they're making some big moves because they need to actually, like, save themselves in that sense. Like they can't keep up the narrative forever. Like people just aren't that interested in it, first of all, but it's not working either. Like once you get it accomplished, right? Once you take the belly out of the American anti-war movement, okay, now what?
Mm-hmm.
What are you going to go with it? Well, you've deadened down, you've turned once largely non-war people into war people, right? Which is now you can aim them at the citizenry. And I see, like, if you want to get to me, like, and this is, I'm going to tie this all together in a second, is what I see going on with what was formerly the anti-war movement that was the left has now become the pro-war movement of the left. It's to gear them up to be ready to war within this own country. Like, I think we can really begin at this point now to go domestic out of all of these things. I think we are like on the verge of some sort of cataclysm within the United States, whether it's going to be some sort of like, Mogadishu Somali type civil war, or it's going to be this weird thing where you're going to get some sort of 1930s version of it, where people just passively allow the uniforms to sweep people up and say it's okay. And these were formerly like, liberal, anti-war, anti-fascist people, so to speak, have allowed themselves to be turned because they've given up their moral high ground with this Ukrainian situation. And they have the evil villain. Ties me into this thing where the elites are like, all right, we need to be able to keep the lights on. Like I still like, and yeah, like this, like, Stuart, we have a pretty interesting country, right? Like, anytime I get doomsdayish, right? Like, anytime I get doomsdayish, like real doomsday, not like get in the bunk, like stay away from the people vibe, is I just go drive down the interstate and you'll just see giant interstate projects going on. And you're like, all right, dude, they're not building huge, like they're building a giant interstate interchange here with the 99 and the whatever in Bakersfield, right? It's Bakersfield. Like that's in the scope of the globalist thing, that's a chopping block city. But they're still building huge infrastructures for this. And I go, well, why? I go, well, they need all this stuff to still work. They need Bakersfield to work to harvest, food and crops and all of these things. Like, they need it all to work. So yeah, like at the end of the day is like this, the electric car is not going to work. It's too mineral extractive, and the recycling of the batteries is, like, most people, that's the new thing I've been digging into, is what do you do with all these batteries when they're done? And you look into it, it is an ecological disaster that makes the extraction of the raw materials look mellow. You know what I mean? Like this.
Yeah, I've only seen the initial extraction. I don't know how they get rid of the stuff. Although I did see,
it's all starting to come out. There's some dude put some pretty interesting stuff out, and I forget what it is. And it really gets into like what will happen when you have these batteries are defunct, which now we're beginning to get to this. Like, remember they had the thing not that long ago with the amount, like with all the computers and phones and stuff, where they're like, look, dude, like the real toxic end isn't the front of it, it's the backside of it. Because yes, there's all sorts of precious metals and this and that in these things, but they're all mixed in this thing, and to like separate them all out. And this is like, it's even more toxic than getting like copper from the ground. Like, you get like gold from the ground. There's a very toxic chemical process to remove, this gold from this rock and stuff. But imagine how much more toxic it is to remove gold from all these other chemicals. You're just taking gold out of like, rock. Now you're taking gold out of, these circuit boards and computer chips and plastics. And so it was very interesting when they get into how many batteries are in these cars. And then you just grow the thing out, like, and they've got everybody decoyed out about the extraction and the where the energy is coming from, but not the waste stream, which again has been the problem with nuclear energy, is like, yes, what do you do with this stuff when it's done? I mean, like, yeah, nuclear power is efficient, maybe. I still don't buy into the argument that nuclear power has ever been efficient, but like when you get into the life cycles of the reactors and the tear down cost and the disposal costs, and because I think Diablo Canyon here just got an extension. So I think that the globalists have put themselves into a corner where it behooves them to do kind of what you're saying, is like they're going to need to put something on every corner.
Yeah, I saw I don't remember what it was, but it was a stat along the lines of there is only enough lithium on Earth to create 1/4 of the current amount of gas-powered cars as electric cars. Well, then what are the other 3/4 of people going to drive? Right, nothing in California apparently in the next 15 years.
Well, that's where I think that when you get into my like perspective of the doomsdayist, I'm not a mushroom clouds doomsdayist anymore. I'm a cultural doomsdayist. I see the timeline of like what we see as normal reality is on the chopping block. And if you haven't moved away from the dependence on like a giant level to the system, you're going to get smoked. You're doomed. Like, but if you're moving yourself away from this thing, like you saw, for example, on this last heat wave, the people that are willing to put their electrical thermostat in a thing for $50 a month don't get any AC, right? Like it's an opt-in system. So I think they're basically saying is like, look, dude, you're not like, you either got to make the leap to what you're doing or you ain't playing, dude. Like, so yeah, we ain't going to need 2/3 of these cars here in a bit, because you ain't going to be driving, dude. You're going to be eating your government cheese in your leftist city, afraid to go out your door because there's rapists and criminals.
Like, I think it's going to be bug cheese anyway, or cricket cheese. It's not going to be real cheese.
Well, that's, it's funny, like everybody's got this alarmist thing about it. Like as a dude who like, tries to has got a little garden in the back here. Like, dude, you don't need to, there's enough crickets rolling through this thing, chowing my stuff, dude. Like I look at it and be like, it's not a big leap to grow my own, dude. And be like, I don't have a big like hang up. I get where it's the industrialized muck of it all, but like this big thing, I think so again is more that weird doomsday truther thing, which I think discredits what people like you and I are trying to do. Is like, yeah, you go down to Mexico, dude, you can get packets of crickets with chili powder on them all day long. They're good. And like I used to eat the worm and the tequila too, man. Like, like that to me is like this again thing where like, yes, if you don't want to go and do your own thing, you will be eating crickets and you're not going to like it. That's the gig. But if you're out actually like living the thing and you're being like, I'm going to eat these crickets just because they're eating my tomato bushes, dude. You know what I mean? Like I look at them like that. I'm like, these things are not, when the locusts come, right? Cook them up, dude. What are you gonna do? They ate your plants.
Yeah, we're definitely living in interesting times. That's
it's fantastic. Well, that's watching the wheels turn of this thing as they are, the noose is tightening. So we're, as we kind of like wrap ourselves up, where do you think we're going here? What's your playbook as a dude who looks at the real information?
I don't know. I haven't had as much time to think ahead as I would have liked recently with these classes starting back up, but give me a specific topic that you want my prediction on.
Well, okay, so you're all right, let's get, so you're professoring young minds, right? And these young minds are creating their own the future in your midst. When you look at your students, where are they going? Like what's their path? Because they know.
I think some of them know. I think maybe not a lot. Some of them know and some of them don't know. And I think a lot of them are overwhelmed by the current state of the world on a lot of different levels. Not just this international stuff that we really talk about here, but domestically within the country. And in a couple of weeks' time, I'll be getting into discussions about ideology and the media. And I can practically guarantee there are going to be stories that, well, we had fights at the Christmas table and the Thanksgiving dinner table over politics, and therefore this happened, and we don't talk to this person in our family anymore because of it. So overall, I think they're in a weird position, because this is also the generation that spent the last 2 years in lockdown and distance learning and all this sort of stuff as well, which I can't tell yet whether or not I'm seeing that have an impact in the classroom. Maybe a little bit, but they are that first group which is coming out of that and going into the big wide world. Even in Oklahoma, we didn't really have massive lockdowns or anything too strict. We certainly weren't chasing down surfers on beaches like was in California. So we didn't descend into that level of police state chaos. But there was just enough of it here, I think, to have somewhat of a negative impact, probably on their development overall.
Well, it's funny, we haven't talked since that, like, just to broach this for a moment, like, and I had to go through the portal on it thing, like, so about a month ago, it all began to, like, kind of, they flipped the narrative and they're like, yeah, those of you who chose to hold the line weren't crazy. Like, you would, like, the numbers are out, that the data's out, they're walking back all this stuff. And I had to, for what, 2.5 years, it was a campaign of fear and terror and, like, peer pressure and, like, oh my God, and this and that. And now the court cases and the lawsuits are beginning to happen, and the people are beginning to speak up, and the CDC is beginning to backtrack and all that stuff. And there was this moment where I had to be like, okay, like, it's over kind of officially, like, what just happened? And I kind of went, because I'm one of those, like, I remember I took notes. I'm not letting these people off the hook. And I was like, wow, we got subjected to some insanity, dude. Mm-hmm. And when I did that, like, it took like a week where I was sort of like, is anyone going to acknowledge that? Like, is someone going to apologize to me? Anyone? Just anyone?
For me, I'm being serious. That incident with the surfer, that was when there should have been thousands of people in the street. Like, what the hell are you doing chasing people off the beach?
They were doing that all over. Remember when they were arresting the moms at the parks and, like, the insanity of it all, right? The backwards dancing, the children in the mask, the whole thing, right? So, so the first week I kind of had this, like, is someone gonna, am I gonna, like, that sort of indignant, like, I told you so, like, thing, right? Like that, like. And then I was like, dude, no one's going to ever say anything. And then it dawned on me that it's already happened. Like, the thing that happened, that, like, everyone, the revolution, the Civil War, the invasion, the conquering, it already happened. Like, we're post-conquering of America. And we just can't see it until you really do take a look back to what happened in the spring and early summer of 2020. Is America surrendered, and they surrendered on a personal level to the corporations and propaganda, and they turned over their freedoms and sovereignty and health and respect and all of, like their thing. And so I, talking about these kids is, like, I think we live, like, I always argue that America fell with the Patriot Act. That was the first, fork in the carcass. But I think we live, these kids that you're teaching right now are post-Patriot Act, right? Like, they were born in
right around then.
Yeah. So when I think about it, I go, and this is my doomsday again, a little bit thing is like, we live in, like, America's been conquered. Like now it's they're beginning to show their teeth, right? And you know, they're rounding up all these political people, they're arresting them. Most people aren't aware the ATF's making huge moves on people, and they like a lot of talk and knocks going on right now, and nobody knows about it. And you know, these young people, like, yeah, no wonder they got anxiety, because they don't live in America. You know, I would argue that the concept of what you came over here for and what I grew up in is long gone. Like, and where does that go? I don't know, but.
And where did it come from, or where did it start?
Yeah.
C. Wright Mills, the power elite. We can't do one of these without mentioning C. Wright Mills.
Yeah, that's like, it's like a trope of the show, right?
Yeah, that's
C.
the
Wright
meme.
Mills, power elite. Well, it's the thing is, and this is, you know, some of these things too is, and we'll wrap this up, is, you know, those things, those, you know, if you really get into those documents that were put here, it was always an inside job. It was always, okay, here, this is the way I can put it. So I haven't talked to you since the 4th of July, right? I had this big aha moment right around there. I was like,
I've lost your volume.
You lost me. Am I there?
Yeah, there you are.
I had this sort of like weird epiphany as I was like, because I usually read the Declaration of Independence like on the 4th of July.
Lost
right?
you again.
Am I back? Don't lose me.
I don't know what's going on. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
You there? Now you're muted. I can't hear you. No, I can't hear you, Stuart. Can you hear me? No? Are you there? Stuart. Oh, no. They got him. Oh, wait. You there?
Yeah.
All right, you're back.
Yeah, I can hear you. So
okay, so I normally read the Declaration of Independence, right? And then I had this thing, I was like, how about the Declaration of Independence is a personal document? It applies to me. And the King George that it's being written to is outside of me. It's the government state, if you will, not because we don't live in the America the founding fathers had, and you could argue that they were Freemasons and just extensions of the crown and decoys anyhow. But that document's very important, and when you really read it and you read the Declaration of Independence and you make it a I-me document about you, it's super potent. And I was like, because I've been on this thing the last year of like, the Constitution, in order for us to get to the next phase, has to be internalized. Like America has to exist, or those principles or the Bill of Rights or the Constitution, right? They have to start inside of me, right? Because God, it all comes from God, and where you are with that's not important. It's just that it's a God-based document, and it reaffirms my God-given right to exist on this planet free of being molested by anybody, you know, so the Magna Carta and all this stuff, right? And I've been taking that in, and then I was like, wait, let me just apply the Declaration of Independence as a personal document. And it really kind of like tripped me out, because I was like, it's everything that's going on now. Like the whole thing. And you go redress these redresses of grievances, and you go, boom. And I think that's where where we're kind of going a little bit is the freedom. Like for those of us, we are abolishing the borders. Like I no longer live within a bordered reality, though I live on a place on the planet called America for all intents and purposes, but it's just a fiction at this point. It's always been a fiction. It's a corporation, right? But I really began to realize that, like, yeah, like like America's going to have to start over again individually within each of us as it was as an idea based upon like these principles that we inherited from God. And I don't know if these youngins get it because they live in conquered America, right? Like they live in an America where they will never ever know what it is to walk into an airport and get on an airplane without anyone asking you a question. You know what I mean? They'll never know what it is to be able to interact with technology uncensored. You know, like that's a huge thing. Like we operate in it, but we're heavily censored. Like you know, just
bring back MySpace.
Yeah, well, just how you started with the algorithm, right? Trying to get your message out. Like it's only going to certain people based upon like what they're looking for. If they're not into we're not, it's not like it was 10 years ago where like, oh, you could hit the pay dirt just on the right phrasing of your channel, your video name, you know?
Yeah, this is what I get for not being consistent over the past 10 years on YouTube.
on what I'll give you on that, Stuart, is and this is something I've held on to a little bit just on YouTube-ness, is I firmly believe that the pendulum's going to swing back around on this platform, because I think they're going to realize that it doesn't do well for a certain reality of it. Like it's all moving over to these other platforms and they're not usable, which I think YouTube's banking on for a little bit, but Rumble's kind of getting a thing. I still can't figure out Rumble, dude. But like, I think for dinosaurs like us on this platform have been around for a little bit. I do think that it's going to pay off in the long run, maybe not in the next year or so, but I think eventually like, we're gonna get the survivors badges.
Yeah, I hope so. But to end on a positive note, though, I've got a lot of very bright students this semester, which is great, and they're willing to get involved in the conversations on big issues, which is good. And yeah, you can see a little bit of a spark in their eyes when we talk about some of this stuff. You can see on day one, they were kind of dreading it because they will just have to take American government to even get their degree in Oklahoma. So I know that can be the type of student that I get where they're just like, oh, no, not this class. But I'm managing to inspire them on some levels, which is good. And yeah, starting to see it pay off, I think, as well in the classroom. But yeah, we'll see what happens and where we go from here. Hopefully to a better place.
Oh yeah, I like you know, it is I'm the eternal optimist. It's tough, dude, because you know you have to battle in your own house first. You know, it starts in your own house. It's tricky to keep a household going, man. Like I'll tell you what, today was no easy day, dude. I was about to like text you and be like, dude. Family drama, dude. I don't have it. And I was like, nope, I made an appointment. That's how once the appointment's made, man, I got to show, dude. So
so the last time we did this was 4th of July.
Was that when it was?
I don't know.
I want to say it was right when we were getting settled in up here. Cause I remember like I was sort of like struggling in that same department. It's been a tricky transition, dude. Let me tell you, man.
I think you'd only just figured out the internet.
Well, I got Starlink.
Yeah, I remember you saying.
I've gotten it since we talked last, because that was killing me, was the bad connectivity. So like about a month ago, I knuckled under and went to Starlink, and I will say that it's pretty darn functional. Like for rural living, it works.
You've got something right.
Well, you know, as the front mail. Yeah, what I thought
you we shall not be named.
Bro, remember we were all getting wires in the back of our head by now, dude, at the mall.
Yeah, I heard that he was raging at the employees over at that company the other day because they weren't working hard enough and moving things along fast enough.
Well, nobody. I think they're dead in the water, dude. I think that pretty much people are going to find out that this electric car idea is probably not the way to go.
Mm.
And they're going to be like, because I've looked into it, and if you don't have your own solar ability to generate your own solar power and store it, like, you've got no business having an electric vehicle. The infrastructure is not there.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't care how much they dump into the like, charging station nonsense. Like, it's a decade out, man. And they blew it. They tried to do it. Like, I remember there was all the charging stations like 10 years ago, and there weren't any electric cars. So they all just sort of like faded. And like, I imagine it's like, I think they're gonna make a big play this winter on this. Like, looks like they're getting ready to do it in Europe and shut it all down.
Mm-hmm.
Which is I wanted to get into that with you. We'll come back next week and get about what's going on in Europe.
Yeah, there are already some updates from this article as well. I'll text it to you. You can read that, and that'll be your primer for our next discussion.
All right, right on, Stuart, man. Let's get back into the rhythm of it. I always enjoy talking to you, and
definitely. I think if it was July when we last spoke, I got COVID mid-July. So then I was out of action for a few weeks, and then teaching started. So that accounts for the gap here. But yeah, now that things are more...
Hey, Stuart, you can only get COVID if you get tested, dude.
That's true.
Otherwise, I got sick.
Yeah, that is true. But yeah, no, we can try and do this every couple of weeks. Definitely.
All right, man. With that said, man, super stoked, and God save the king.
No comment.
No comment. Perfect. All right, my brother.
No, was more perfect. I will plead the fifth. There you go.
There you go, dude. There you go. May the lizard scamper across your forehead tonight.
Good to see you, Hamish.